Okay.
All right, so it is Robert Welborn. It is IoT. Robert, it is nice to see you.
It's nice to be seen. How you been?
Right? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
So, autonomous vehicles, we've got three parts here. We got myths, truths, and insights. This one is myths.
Yeah,
So, turn us wise, Robert.
sure. Well,
How long is this list, by the way?
the easiest place to start with the myths is TV, and I have to reference three seminal TV shows, two of which you've probably never heard of, and one I hope is your favorite from the 80s. But My Mother the Car being the first one.
I have heard reference to that, but
Yeah.
I've never seen an episode.
One of the Van Dykes was part of the show, and basically, this guy's mom turned into a car, and she took him around places. So
Was that embodied intelligence? Is that
yeah, exactly. It was what she knew how to do, and since she knew how to drive, she obviously was going to be able to do just transfer everything she knew about her personal motor movement into being a car. The second one would be Automan, which was on opposite of Manimal and starred, where the first one starred one of the Van Dykes, this one starred Desi Arnaz Jr.
wow?
Yeah, obscure as far as shows go. And
I
so
feel like I know Manimal, but I should know Automan. That one is
literally, it was like one show was right after the other, and they crossed over like a couple times. They were filmed on the same lot. It was part of this thing by NBC of trying to do. It's funny. Manimal shows up in Seinfeld in the background when they're showing successful TV shows, but not Automan. But again, like this car that was able to basically drive itself from computers, and essentially the cool thing I liked about it was that he like put in the address of something, and that was where it went. And from that one standpoint, it was like the navigation thing is going to be obviously a really big piece of it. So at least I got that part right.
okay.
But the rest of it, I believe, was a bit over dramatized. And then Knight Rider, of course, being my favorite one. It is why was there a user interface that involved the steering wheel at all? It's a robot that can do absolutely everything. Why were there pedals? I love that he had a manual mode, but Michael Knight wasn't even nearly as good as Kit. Kit was obviously far superior intelligence to Michael Knight. And this is nothing against David Hasselhoff, because obviously you're not allowed to say anything negative about David Hasselhoff.
Well, certainly not in Germany.
Not in Germany. But the Knight Rider, I believe, unfortunately, I think as a meme influenced so much of what we think of autonomous vehicles, and that and all three of those embody the same thing: is that there's this intelligence that just starts knowing how everything works, as opposed to what is basically, and I believe we've spoken about before, is the Imitation Game that was proposed by Turing. And this idea of I can create a child, or I can create an adult, or I can create a teenager as far as an intelligence, and then kind of let it learn everything else. And his suggestion was we create a teenager, and I think what you see with each of those other three was they were creating an adult. And so the development time for a fully functioning adult that fully understands how to interact with everything, and is capable of doing some of the abstract reasoning of a plastic bag coming towards me is not that big of a deal. A leaf coming towards me is probably not that big of a deal, but a shopping cart coming towards me, I probably got to steer out of the way. Whereas I might consider all three of those things to be roughly the same value. To me personally, understanding the frequency and severity of those events is the complication there. And and the teenager approach, I believe, is probably the reason for a large portion of these myths. Is that if you've ever taught a teenager how to drive, or if you've ever been a teenager learning how to drive, I know you live in New York, and so there's a possibility you never learned how to drive living in New York.
Oh, I'm not that cool. I'm from outside of the city originally.
Okay, got it.
I did learn how to drive, and the key was to not turn on the music, because that's when I lost my mind.
Oh, okay, got it. Well, And you know, and oddly enough, you know, that's kind of the magic of the of autonomous, is that there's this level of stimuli is just fine, and this other thing gets added to it, and now the question is it still capable of solving the problem that's sitting in front of it? And I think, you know, I mean, this is one of these spaces where you know, computers have been fantastic for us in solving problems of parsing large sets of data and being able to combine and look at lots and lots of data at the same time. And, you know, adding one additional stream isn't that big of a deal to a linear regression. It's not that big of a deal to a fraud detection algorithm. Those sorts of things, you know, those things get incorporated in quite well. But, you know, when the streams are as big as they are, I mean, and the way that we've treated everything up to this point was it was a column. You know, it was on a table, and I had, you know, rows and columns on the table, and I added another column of data, and everything worked just fine. But, you know, adding another camera isn't a column of data. You know, it's terabytes of data. And so I think one of the things that has perpetuated a lot of the myths is that we're going to be able to just take whatever we had before and add it to the autonomous platform. And, you know, therein lies a space where I think there's a lot of experimentation that's going to be really profitable for our individual contributors, but it's going to be, you know, whoever is collecting the most amount of data is going to collect the most amount of learning, and whoever's got the most mature learning platform is going to be the superior platform. So if your vehicle framework for your company is driving on the roads right now, you're far superior to someone who's not driving, exponentially so. And I think the one of the big myths has been, well, then whoever's got the most data from vehicles that aren't necessarily autonomous, so basically just data streaming in from connected vehicles, Tesla, GM, BMW, Toyota, those sorts of things, that they'll just be able to incorporate that data in the framework. And the thing that we're realizing is that the framework is not as elastic due to the nature of how big the additional data sets are. And in engineering, you'll hear this thing deforms elastically. That means it deforms and then it gets back to its position, and it deforms plastically as it breaks. And, you know, I mean, the thing that is happening when we add these new giant data sets is that it's breaking. And this is one of these spaces where from an engineering standpoint, that we just don't have precedent. The folks who understood driving, and the folks who understood vision, and the folks who understood the math surrounding decision algorithms, unfortunately, like adding one more thing would be just fine to a driver. Adding one more thing would be just fine to a model. But we've discovered this space where, you know, we're trying to mix things that don't go together well. And out of time, so.
Yeah, that's fair. I will leave us with this cliffhanger, which is that because we're talking about supervised learning, and if we engage maybe unsupervised learning or reinforcement learning, will we be a little bit more elastic?
Yeah, and we'll be talking about reinforcement learning, I think, on the next space. So
here we go. Wonderful. Robert Welborn, thank you so much for your time. Can't wait for the next one.
Thanks for having me, man.